All right, welcome everybody to Market Brews podcast. This is a show where two friends going to discuss two fantastic industries, that is, real estate and craft beer. Each episode, our plan is we're going to break down the current topics in the real estate world and highlight a new local brewery for your drinking pleasure. And then, so let's get started. Let's talk about some homes and some hops. And please, if you like what you see, you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button and follow along and stay up to date on all things real estate and craft beer. I'm co-host Matt Murray with Premier Mortgage Lending, Senior Loan Officer, and with me today is...
Hey everybody, I'm t.murphy with Granite Life Realty in Keller Williams Metropolitan. Super happy to be here and finally launch this topic that Matt and I have been thinking about doing for probably a year or so now, but finally, probably even more. Yeah.
Probably 3 years.
Yeah, but finally put it down to paper and put it on the calendar, and we're super excited. So yeah, like Matt said, we're here to really review and educate a lot of what's going on in the market. I think you've maybe seen some posts from us already looking for any questions that you may want answered, so please keep an eye out for that and post questions all the time. We really want to talk about what you want to talk about. We're going to talk about hot topics in the housing market and the lending market, obviously. We want to really deliver the raw and real answers that you're looking for. Again, this is tailored to what you want. We're going to bring a topic or two, but we really want to talk about the questions that we're getting from you. So we're super excited about it and ready to rock here. Our very first guest, dear friend of mine and my favorite brewery in New Hampshire, we got Steve Bradbury, a.k.a. Doc Jones from Lithermans Limited.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Welcome. So, yeah.
Do you think before we get into this, we just pour a beer and start going at it from there?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, why not?
Right. What's up first today, Doc? We got a couple beers. Why don't you tell us a little bit about each and what you want to drink first?
Yeah, sure. So first up tonight is our flagship IPA, Misguided Angel. It's a 7.5% ABV New England style IPA. Gets double dry hopped with Simcoe, Citra, and Mosaic hops. That combination gives you some pine, some citrus zest, as well as a nice balance with the bitterness that you would expect in an IPA.
Yep, definitely. I know Matt's a big fan of it. I think
by far my favorite beer right now.
Yeah. I think
absolutely.
when we first met, Matt and I, we met at a Dunkin' Donuts for like 2.5 hours, and I'm glad it was a Dunkin's and not probably Litherman's or something. We quickly got into hanging out a lot, and once he knew I was Litherman's local, he certainly started coming up and hanging out. So let's get this poured and have a little taste here on a nice 10 a.m. on a Thursday.
Guided or?
Misguided.
Okay.
Yeah.
This doesn't mess the mics up too much.
So, Doc, while we're pouring here, you want to tell us a little bit about Lithermans as a whole, where you're located, where you came from, all that?
Absolutely. So, Lithermans Limited, we are located in Concord, New Hampshire. We've been open for just about 6 years now. You can find all our information at www.lithermans.beer. You can also find us on Facebook as well. We do a lot of different styles of beer at the brewery, focused on IPAs. We also do a bunch of fruited kettle sours, as well as some stouts and lagers as well. So depending on when you come into the tap room, you'll never know what you're going to find on tap. And we always have new releases going out to stores as well.
Yeah, and you've kind of made a lot of leaps and bounds recently as far as your where you're headed now and where you're distributing. So talk a little bit about that. I know you're not just in New Hampshire anymore, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's been very exciting. So it just with New Hampshire, we started working with Amoskeag Beverages as our distributor. So we're now found throughout the whole state of New Hampshire and a lot more stores and even in some grocery store chains now as well. And then this last summer, we started distributing in Philadelphia. And hopefully a few weeks after this podcast airs, you may start to see us in New York City as well.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And that must be really cool for you because that brings you right back home, right?
Yeah, we'll be distributing in all around New York City, including Staten Island, which is where I'm originally from. So that's kind of exciting as well.
That's awesome, man. Good for you. One thing I think a lot of people don't know just about Litherman's beers in general are the label pieces. So talk a little bit about the labels or the names of the beers, where those come from, and how deep they can get sometimes, you know?
Sure. So for us, music's a big part of my life, and along with craft beer. So all of our labels, all of our names for our beers are all inspired by music. Some of them are very obvious, and other ones are very low-key. You have to dig into some lyrics on an obscure song to get the reference.
Yep.
In addition to that kind of brings out the artwork as well. So the artwork's inspired by the music and the beer. In addition to that, in today's market, there's hundreds and hundreds of beers on a shelf in a store. So how do you stand out? You have to have artwork that makes people want to pick up the can and read what the beer is,
Yep.
and then make a decision on if they want to try it.
Pretty sure that's going to be my next tattoo.
Yeah, like the angel.
I can get you the artwork. I got you.
Speaking of artwork, obviously I know the guy, but tell us a little bit about the guy that behind the artwork in this.
Yeah, our graphic designer is Steve Lee of Steve Lee Designs. Steve and I go all the way back to college together, so we've known each other a long time. He's a phenomenal artist. I mean, we joke that he's a graphic designer, but he's an artist first. Many of his things that he does are actually hand drawn, on the computer.
Sure.
He's just an amazing artist.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You want to get into some topics here before we just talk about beer for the rest of the episode? Because that's where it's heading. Awesome.
I was like, all right, well, you know what? Forget about the damn market industry and
Already
the housing
off course.
market. Let's just talk about beer. This is so much better.
Right.
Yeah, let's jump into it. So
we're going to get into a couple
ahead.
market facts. I think probably the most staggering of which is the median home price in New Hampshire homes. Speaking of December, so that's the most recent data we have out there, is now $400,000 throughout the state of New Hampshire. Absolutely staggering. We've still seen that incredible growth last year of about 16% year over year on homes. Which, a lot of people, buyers specifically, are out there going, this is just crazy. Everybody's overpaying. But that's truly where the market's brought us,
Right.
Great for sellers. Obviously, a lot of people are now making out on the baby boomers that are, selling their empty nested homes. But again, that poses the problem because they're looking to move into smaller homes, which, we'll get into here. But there's not a lot of smaller homes being built for them to move into. So it poses a big problem there.
And the competition now, because millennials are now out circling that market, and with the incredibly low interest rates that have been the last 2 years, has allowed them to kind of say, all right, I'm going to enter the market because they can afford more.
Right.
And then now we have this clash of who's buying that smaller or that first time home buyer to I'm downsizing, and that's been a huge, obviously, challenge for why the inventory, or one of the reasons why the inventory is currently low.
Yeah.
Is just the incredible amount of buyers to the market from both of those.
Both sides, yeah. And it's, unfortunately, the listings aren't able to keep up, so we're going to have to rely on more new housing, new builds, things like that, which, I certainly think we're seeing a lot of throughout New Hampshire, at least. But at that point, we're dealing with the market and product being more expensive. I think lumber just took another hike once it was finally starting to level out. I just heard about that. So, we'll see kind of where it goes here. But it is interesting. If you look at the trends, really historically in New Hampshire, we had a really slow or low inventory months, even more than normal, November and December. But they are starting to increase a little bit here in January. And, again, historically, we start to see a bit of an increase as we get into certainly March and such. But in the main markets that I'm in, in the Concord area and Lakes region, I think we're starting to see a good bump of homes coming on. Again, it's a lot of those get ready to visit 8 open houses in a weekend because that's how quickly you have to make your decision, get some offers in. But it's interesting, a lot of people out there saying, I'm going to wait for this market to settle, and I think it's time we all start to kind of have that discussion that is this the new normal, you know? And I think we can kind of bring that into the market percentage, the mortgage percentages. Talk a little bit about that, what's coming up this year, what we're seeing now.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, to really summarize what has been going on with COVID, rates have dropped incredibly. Again, millennials coming out buying homes, baby boomers downsizing because they're making so much money on their on their house when they sell. And then, so, it's been tight. So flood of the market, a lot of buyers, tight on inventory because of the unknown the last 2 years, obviously with COVID and, are we working from home for the rest of our lives? Are we going back to work? So that unknown period for the last 2 years has kind of just, really, kind of set that tone or that pace for, the frenzy that we've seen.
Yep.
So this year, so far, in the beginning of the year, we've seen much of the same as last year. But interest rates have, they started to rise. With that, hopefully that will soften the market a little bit, slow that flood of buyers, as well as, again, now being 2 years, we talked about it a little bit before the show started, but, is this the new normal? People now will know, like, hey, I am working, I can work from home for the foreseeable future. I can now sell my house. I can move wherever I want. So hopefully that will, throw some new inventory, this year, pick up and,
it's interesting. I agree with that 100%. Like great stuff. Right. Hopefully. Right. Yeah. And I'm dealing now more with the baby boomers or, the parents of my best friends in the towns I grew up in that I'm looking at listing their homes and trying to help them downsize. But that downsizing is so tough now because, again, there's not many smaller places for them to move to. A lot of people want that single floor living as they get older, and a lot of that stuff just isn't available out there. So it's tough, and if it is, we have those millennials out there trying to buy those for their first homes. So there's again, they're just kind of out there competing against each other. I think one thing that is nice about a lot of people realizing they can work from home now is the fact that it's making those baby boomer homes that are being listed a lot more palatable, right? Because everybody needs that extra room. If you don't have a kid yet, or if you have one kid, that fourth bedroom is going to act as a home office,
right? That dedicated office space,
or a learning center, for the kids if they happen to be out of school for whatever reason. So, it's interesting to see this shift. And again, a lot of people are saying we're going to wait for it to settle, but again, I think a lot of us are now starting to realize that this is what we're settling into,
right?
So. I don't think it's a scary thing. I think it's just a change, right? Change is bad. We're all going to die, I think is what, you always hear that. So I think we've all kind of gotten through that over the last 2 years, like you said, Matt. Correct. And hopefully we see some balance here in that, coming soon.
Agreed. Yep. So,
they always say, I was going to say, they always say, a house is an investment, right? Whether you bought a house 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that house is an investment. And I think the market has always shown that long term, that investment's actually become a shorter term investment than a longer term investment, but over time, it's always going to gain in value, right? So regardless of where the market is at now or where it was at 5 years ago, houses have continued to increase in value. Mm-hmm. So it's a good thing for a buyer. They know they're getting into a property that later on down the road, it's an investment.
Right. Correct. I agree.
Great stuff, and I think the final thing we'll really talk about before I guess we get into more beer, and talking about that is we are seeing a big change, and totally lost my train of thought here. Give me a second here; it'll come back to me.
Take a sip of your beer. Man.
Yeah, right. That's probably what I need. Something.
I think I'm the only one drinking this, by the way.
Oh, no, I'm doing a good job.
All right, fine. Just checking.
No, I got it. I think it's the turnaround people are seeing. You said that cycle is a little shorter. I've had some people in call it my age bracket, somewhere in their 30s that have owned a home for a year or two, and they are able to turn that around in a year or two, make a significant amount of equity.
That's crazy.
And then move into their next home, Yep. So a lot of people were kind of always wanted to, 7-year cycle is I think what you always hear of being in a house. You've seen 2 and 3 years. I mean, I'm seeing people in 2 years get out with sometimes 6 figures in net profit, but it's just amazing.
Yeah.
So that's been awesome to watch, and be able to see that. And again, I think from the investment standpoint, that really speaks to it. You know?
And then on my side, obviously from the buying side, people bought the house 2 years. They've made a significant amount of money. They're now back on the market. So again, that's flooded more buyers to it again. But even on my side, on the mortgage side, we've seen more cash out refinances because they've earned so much equity in such a short time that they can take some of that. They can do home improvements and whatnot. So it's just been, it's been a crazy time the last couple of years. So
right. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right, anything else you want to cover on the market, Matt, or do we just kind of get into talking with Doc some more about what he brought us and kind of his plans this year?
I think, that was kind of our first, being the first, podcast, the first time we've done this. We wanted to kind of, like you said, talk about inventory, the outlook. So, from my perspective, talking to the people that may be listening that are looking to buy, how to navigate this. Again, like you said, Terry, you can wait it out, but again, we don't know what that new normal still is yet to this day. So, we talked about how to navigate. You got to get out in front of it, be prepared, obviously get your pre-approvals done, and then you just have to talk more strategy at this point. Maybe a little bit more planning.
Yep.
Where, you can have these low down payment options, 3-5%. All right, well, if that's where you're at, no problem. Let's talk about where to buy demographic-wise. That's, where you come in.
Right.
And just, really, try to get out in front of it, get prepared, know what you're up against, educate you, and then just hang in there.
Yeah, and that's it. It's hang in there is a big, a great phrase to use.
Right.
That's it. Is strategy, I think, is the biggest, the most important it's ever been with buyers, and sense of urgency.
Right.
Right. It very much so. Just a few years ago, when I first started selling real estate, it would be, house comes on, on the market on a Wednesday. Maybe we'll go to the open house if there is one this weekend, but otherwise we probably got 10 or 15 days to worry about it. Now, if it's on the market on a Wednesday or Thursday, if you're not at that open house with the other, 55 people, you're probably not going to have a chance to make an offer on it unless you want to do it without looking at it, because Monday by 5 you got to have those offers in.
Right.
Again, but don't worry about that. That's what we're here for. I've written more offers in the last year than I did in the previous 2.5 years combined.
Right.
But it comes down to good strategy, both with your lender and your agent. Matt's talked about some really good strategies with me lately that have been successful in him with some of his other agents in getting deals done. So it's about working with, again, the people that you trust and having some people behind you. And then, again, as a buyer, you just got to have a sense of urgency right now if you're really ready to buy, and kind of go from there, because the houses come on, and they come on quick, and then they're gone.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Cool.
So,
but yeah, get pre-approved first. I think that's the biggest thing right now. Spend the time with your lender to get yourself pre-approved and know what you can really spend. And then, if after 60 days or so you're not, you're not under contract on something, revisit, see where you're at, and kind of go from there.
absolutely. Yep. Cool. Yeah.
Cool. That's
Call
it.
it at that for now.
Yeah.
We could talk about this
We could go forever.
way more in depth, but
Please send us more questions. You know what you want to talk about. It's going to be a couple weeks. We got this one out a little bit later than we wanted to in February here. So January coming up in February. We're going to do an early taping. So
it is February. Right?
it's now February.
Oh yeah. Oh, Jesus.
It's February. We've got another one coming out in a few weeks here. So send us some questions, what you want us to talk about, because we're definitely happy to hear that.
Yeah. Great.
All right, beer.
Yeah. Let's talk about the beer.
So, Matt, I drink a lot of beer with you in the summertime on your boat.
No.
And
I don't know what you're talking about.
you generally drink the Bud Lights and the Coors Lights and stuff like that. So it was shocking to me to, hear the Misguided Angel's my favorite beer when we first started talking about Lithermans, and now I know it's your favorite beer because
Right.
I certainly know that based on your love for it anytime it's around you.
Yeah,
So tell me why this is your favorite beer versus the other beers you normally drink.
Not to incriminate myself, but during the summer up on the boat, obviously the light beers, your Coors, your Buds, you can put them down a little bit easier. They, you can drink more of them and kind of stay sober.
Sure,
That's what you
sure.
do. So like I said in the beginning, I'm going to call myself out. I like beer a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
Sure.
Dude, I know some basics, IPAs versus a lager, light beer, blah, blah, blah. But the basics of how do you get the alcohol per volume?
Sure.
You talked about double hopped,
Double dry hop. Yeah.
I have no idea what any of that means. So, what I look for, me personally, and again, this is me, I look for a beer is I think this is a word, drinkability, where this beer, particular Misguided Angel, why it's my favorite. You can have a few of these, and you don't feel that full. It's got tons of flavor.
Nope.
It doesn't have that, like, I don't know if I want to call it bitterness. That aftertaste. Some
I
of the,
think it's great.
the IPAs sometimes have, where they have that, like, a little bit more of that stronger aftertaste, where this one doesn't. It's just smooth. It tastes great. You can drink a few of them, and so this would be my go-to all the time when it comes to an IPA.
Sure.
But again, from the pines and everything you just said,
Right.
I don't know.
Where does it come from, right?
Yeah.
We'll get into that
Yeah.
In a minute here, but I'll talk about why it is actually my favorite beer too.
Maybe you can speak more intelligently.
Yeah, I've got a little bit more beer experience. I don't know in drinking, but certainly making it. But yeah, I think drinkability is probably where you nailed it the most. I think that the New England IPA style has become so popular, both throughout the country, but really the industry and probably what's out there selling the most right now. Maybe backed up with these new fruited sours, but it's I've been drinking. I'm 30, almost 38 years old, so I've been drinking for 16 years, and I was really, in college and stuff when I would say craft beer was like Nut Brown, and it was really just like a darker beer. It was a Newcastle or something like that, and then Red Hook, came out with their Long Hammer. IPA started to become a little bit more of a thing, and people kind of got themselves used to that flavor. I think West Coast kind of pushed some of that over here too. But again, I think the first IPA was from Harpoon, maybe. Yep. Anyway, back to the beer itself.
A little beer history.
Yeah, a little beer history. Back to the beer itself. I'm a huge IPA guy. I love a good hoppy beer. And I think that with these New England IPA styles, a lot of breweries have gotten away from the fact that beers are supposed to have a little bitterness to them, but not sit there and linger. Right. And what I love about Misguided Angel is it gives you that fruity citrus, grapefruity flavor. But you have a little bit that hop bite right up front. I think from those Simcoe hops, kind of hit you, and then you've really got that juicy, smooth profile in the background that doesn't dry you out. I love that too. To have a beer and feel like you're trying to lick your lips and get yourself you're smacking afterwards because it's so bitter or such a dry beer that it kind of brings that to you, but. Yeah, this is, it's a 7.5% beer, but it's literally one of those beers. You say it, I don't know what it is about this beer. I feel like this is something I could drink all day and still not be crazy, right. Which is crazy for a 7.5% beer. And I don't know if it's just that I've had so much of it. It's part of my bloodstream or what. But
IV tap.
Yeah. But no, it's literally my favorite beer. It's always my go-to. I love that. You guys they're in Market Basket now. Pretty much anywhere from the New Hampshire border to Mass all the way up into top of New Hampshire now. You can get it. Anywhere I go, I can grab a 4-pack of Angel, show it to my friends, and be like, "Hey, this is one of my good friends that owns this." So
great.
Fantastic beer. But yeah, I guess if we're gonna talk about let's talk about the composition of beer, right? Let's start at the very basics.
Real quick though, like you talked a little bit of history. Breweries. It's how many are in New Hampshire now? Like.
I believe the number is right around 100.
100, yeah.
Right around 100. Yeah.
So, but what year? I'm trying to think back. You talked about college, Terry. Like, trying to think back. Like, I'm a little bit older than you, but we're kind of the same. In that same time frame when we went to college. But like 05, 06, like when they started coming on, or like you can probably tell us. But like
before that, for sure.
Was it? Yeah.
Well, there was two waves, right?
Right.
So you had the first wave in the mid '90s. We had like Pete's Wicked, Newcastle became popular, Bass Ale was pretty much everywhere. So you had all these different beer. Killian's was big back then, and Sam Adams was really starting to make its big increase nationwide.
Yep.
And then a lot of them disappeared. And there was a few years, and then I think in the mid 2000s, you started to see this resurgence of small local craft breweries start again. So there was like 10 years apart, there was another big bump in the market, and it just hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
People are drinking more and more local beer. They want to drink what's made in their town or city or in their state. And there's so much great quality beer. You don't have to leave your own state anymore to find great beers that you
Totally.
like.
Yep. So yeah, mid 2000s, I think that's a great way to kind of start. Is really when this push got big again, and really where the industry and I think you see the home brewing became huge. That's really where my start in this came from, and the love of craft beer was I worked in restaurants for a long time. I love to cook. I love to make recipes, but I just didn't like the life of working in restaurants and working late, going in early. So I was trying to find, I got out of that back into the car business, and I was like, what's my outlet now? I miss building recipes. I like to cook and stuff, but there's something I need there. So I was lucky enough to go to college with the owner's son. His name's Keegan Rice. Keegan's a great realtor, by the way, up in the Plymouth, New Hampshire area with Peabody and Smith. But Keegan's dad is Scott Rice, who owns the Woodstock Inn and Brewery. So if a lot of people don't know about that, they're probably that mid-'90s, right?
They are.
Yeah.
Place
Yeah, they've been around for a while.
where they came around, and a lot of people know Pig's Ear. They have 4,000 footer IPA. They're a pretty popular place. But so anyway, Keegan and I went to college together, and taught me how to brew beer at 18 years old in his Dover apartment. So that's where I was like, oh, I need an outlet, making recipes, doing stuff. I'm gonna start homebrewing beer. So I moved back in with my parents after college, and that's kind of where my love came from. 2004 area, 2001, somewhere around there. And then I got heavy into it. I have a big homebrew system at home. Or not big. I have a decent homebrew system at home and a kegerator, and that's kind of where my love came from. And then I literally just started knocking on this guy's door, and trying to work my way out back into the brewery as a regular there. So I won't dive into me and beer, but
I was gonna say that's when we found out we lived down the road from each other.
yeah,
right?
that's kind of it. Yeah, so I finally got invited out back to the brew house one day to shoot it with Doc while I was there having a beer, and yeah, we realized we lived like 2 miles away from each other, and then all of a sudden we became friendly, and here we are. But yeah, why don't we talk about it, since it's a beer podcast? Let's talk about like the 4 basic ingredients to beer, kind of the basics of beer and that stuff. We got plenty of time, I think, here. So there's 4 major ingredients. I'm gonna have him definitely do it. But yeah, there's 4 major ingredients we'll talk about, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, 4 major ingredients in beer are water, which is their number 1 ingredient, malt, hops, and yeast. Those are the building blocks of any beer. Nowadays, there's so many styles of beer that add additional ingredients in, whether it's fruit or orange peel, things like that. But really, those are the 4 major ingredients you need to make beer. And with those 4 ingredients, you can make thousands of different flavors. The combination of hops, the combinations of malt, the combinations of yeast, and this type of water, because water is not the same everywhere from state to state, from country to country. Your water profile and the mineral content is different. Right. So those 4 characteristics can make hundreds of different styles of beer, which is why you have certain areas of the world that are known for their lagers or their IPAs or, fill in the blank. It's because of the raw ingredients they had in that area hundreds of years ago to where there are now has led to those styles to be the way they've come out. So.
Right. So to that point, it's amazing just from my homebrew brewing 5 and 10 gallons of beer at a time experience. You can take the water out of your little RO purification system that you have, use that for your water to make your beer in, and then just take the water from your well, exact same ingredients, exact same everything, and you're going to have 2 different products in the end. And it can literally be a matter of one mineral being a small percentage higher than the other that changes that characteristic so much. Yeah. So water, as it's your number 1 ingredient and kind of shapes everything. It's amazing the detail you have to go into. So, what are some of the steps you take in making the beers to make sure you're always having those same profiles? Kind of how do you go about that?
Great question. So for us, we have a water filtration system, at the brewery. It's a full carbon system. We're on, like many breweries, we're on a city water. So we filter out all the chloramines out of the water using our filtration system. So we're starting with a very neutral water minus, the minerals that are in that water. We pull a water report, every couple of months to make sure, because there's always going to be fluctuations in your water. I don't want to geek out too much on this.
No, geek out. Yeah. This is great. No, seriously.
Then from there, what we do is we adjust the water using whether it be calcium or magnesium things like that to adjust it. So basically some basic salts to get the profile we're looking for, and we adjust it based on the style of beer that we're making. Right. If we're looking for a beer that we want to have a softer mouthfeel, we'll adjust the minerals that way. If we're looking for a beer where we want a much harder water profile, like if you're making a crisp lager, we'll adjust them that way. So we're adding additional salts to the water to get it to the profile we're looking for the style of beer that we're looking to make that day.
And it just starts with the water, huh?
Yeah. Literally, that's what it starts with.
Most important ingredient.
Yeah.
You got to start there.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Keep going.
So yeah, I think that's really the basics from a water standpoint. I guess when it comes to, so you combine process-wise, you get, you put all the water in a big thing called the mash tun, and then you have your grain in that mash tun. So the grain or the malt is kind of the next ingredients. Mm-hmm. So take it. Let's just talk about these two beers. You'll see the color of this beer in this, and then the sour, once we open that, they'll be significantly different. This is fruited, so it's going to have actual color to it.
Sure.
So it may not be the best example we can show right now, but if you're looking at this, how it's kind of a little yellow, it's cloudier, you can't really see through it, it's hazy. Picture a Coors Light or something, how see-through that is. Mm-hmm. So your malt profile and your water profile will even change. Your yeast has something to do with it, but those two things can significantly impact the look of the beer. Your malt will change the color of the beer and things like that. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, let's talk about like maybe the malt differences in these two beers, or maybe contrast an IPA with maybe a stout or something like that.
Sure. Well, your malts are going to give you, whether it's a biscuit or cracker flavor, or if you're moving into some dark beers, roasted malts will give you those coffee and darker notes. Yep. And then there's other crystal malts which will give you some sweetness as well. And then wheat will give you some nice more bread type notes as well. So there's a ton of different malts that are out there to use, and different malts companies that will roast these different malts to different degrees. So after water, your malt is the next big thing that builds the backbone of your beer. Right. That's what's going to give you your sweetness and all these other notes. From there, then you're looking at what hops you're going to use, and depending on the style of beer you're going to brew, some beers have very little hops. Some, like an IPA, have a ridiculous amount of hops, especially based on today's standards, and everything in between. Hops are grown all around the world, and depending on the variety of hops and where it's grown, depends on the actual flavors it will give you. Some hops will give you earthy floral notes. Some will give you more citrus notes. Some will give you just a very piney note as well. And some are just very green. They're just vegetal and green. And depending on the beer you're brewing and when you use them in the process, depends on what the final product's going to taste like.
So that's a great thing. So a lot of people don't know that, right? You typically, we'll talk about an IPA, most brewers boil their beer for 60 minutes, right? Yeah. And so in that 60-minute boil, when you add your hops, will change the profiles that it gives to that beer, that finished product. So the sooner in the boil that you add those hops, the more it's going to extract from that, because it has a lot of time to really break those hops down and really pull all the terpenes and linolens and all the alpha acids, beta acid, all kinds. There's all kinds of ingredients we could get into here.
It's a whole college, like they should
it's
have
nuts.
Like
there
college,
there are
degrees for this.
Yeah, they do now. So UNH, we were talking to them just a few weeks ago. One of my neighbor's kids went to UNH through their brew program and is now brewing
Cisco, right?
At Cisco,
What do you think
Old
about
Red
it?
Hook. Yeah,
huge industry, right?
Huge.
So like, even everything you're talking about is like, hey, to become a brewmaster or to work at some, like even your company, you need to know what you're doing.
Right, absolutely. Right.
Yeah. So like, you need a college degree in brewing beer.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so as you get closer to the end of the boil is typically when you're making an IPA and you're going to add a lot of these hops, because it doesn't necessarily add a ton of like upfront bitterness, but it's going to add all that flavor that we're getting out of it, or the perceived flavor, I guess.
Right.
So it's very interesting. And then even when they finish boiling and they're cooling the beer down, or the wort at that point before it's beer, as they're cooling that down, as you get to different stages in temperature, and you add hops at those different temperature stages, it will actually pull out different characteristics from the hops. So again, This is just a guy that reads a lot online and has learned a ton over years of brewing. Talk to Doc or somebody that just gets out of UNH with a brewing degree. They're going to tell you a lot more than I just did there, but here's my 50,000 foot view, you know.
You were spot on. Yeah, you were spot on.
So from a, so that's really the hops standpoint, but hops shape a beer, right? Hops
totally.
Seriously shape a beer.
They totally shape a beer.
Oh, sorry, that was malt.
We were talking about malt, but we moved into hops.
Yeah,
We moved into hops.
It was a good transition there.
It was a good transition.
I caught it.
Hops shape the beer, and when you use them and where you use them,
Yep.
in addition to which ones you use, will have a different impact on the final recipe.
Right.
And then after the boil, when the beer is fermenting, there's also dry hopping. And you brought up earlier double dry hopping. What does that even mean?
Right, yeah.
There's a lot of debate in the brewing industry from brewers on what is their definition of double dry hopping. To some brewers, it's adding hops twice during fermentation or post-fermentation. And to others, it's adding twice the amount you would normally use at one time post-fermentation.
Sure.
I don't think there's a right or wrong on that because it's about everyone has a different process to achieve the result they're looking for.
Gotcha.
But typically when you see double dry hop, it's using twice the amount of hops that you normally would use. As far as how it's used at that point, it's up for debate, but
Right.
it's
Well, it's
typically
all about the finished product, right?
Exactly.
So like, hey, if Misguided Angel came out of one process with the other, we're like, hey, whatever, like let's go with this because this came out of it. So,
Well, and that's a great point, right? So, as a home brewer that would go out and drink a beer that I really like, I'm like, I got to figure out how they made this, right? So Doc and I do this a lot. We'll go out and do market research for them, and go get a pizza and a few beers, and we'll drink some.
can I get that college education?
We'll get
You're
that.
in.
Research?
He means can you get that call the next time? Yes, you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, we go out and do some market research, but we'll do just that. We'll go to places that, he'll maybe have a beer or two sitting where, we'll check on the quality of that beer there, and then we'll try some other beers that are being sold there and being like, all right, well, we really like this, and, how do we think it's made,
Right.
So as you start to know this stuff more, you kind of can start to understand that. But to the point of you can add hops at two different stages or double the amount at one stage, and you might have two different beers at the end.
Totally.
So I think that's really the cool thing about it. And I think maybe how some breweries probably find their beers is, hey, let's just take a very similar recipe. Let's maybe change a couple of the hops and a very similar staging in which we're going to put them in there, but change just a couple of things here. And you've got a whole new product at the end. But I think the biggest thing, a testament, real quickly, we'll talk about why I like Litherman so much is the consistency. You can go to a lot of breweries and have their beer a couple times and it tastes different sometimes. I don't think you really find that with Lithermans, and it's about process, checking the boxes, making sure you have everybody on the same page, because as Lithermans now grows, you're growing in people that are out there touching your products, or touching the building style, of the products. So it's really nice that consistency piece is amazing and very, very important in the beer. A 3 or 4 minute shift, if you forget to set the timer right away before you got to go back and put the rest of the hops in, that can maybe mean a different batch of beer.
Completely.
So that's very important.
So so I just thought of a question, like, so as Misguided Angel is gaining that popularity, you're getting New York State, you said, obviously all the market baskets here, it's growing. Do you have to change a lot of your kind of like, because now you have a lot more distribution that's going out, you're brewing a lot more of it. Mm-hmm. Is there a big change as far as how you produce the beer and can the beer, and then when you have to get it out on the trucks out to the stores?
Good question.
So there's not a change in the recipe or the beer itself. The change comes into the production piece of how do you manage your production schedule, right? So it's, all right, now that we need to make more of it, how many fermenters do I need to dedicate towards making this one beer? Right now, Misguided Angel is 50% of our production. And as things increase, we need to say, well, now that needs to be 60%. So this other fermenter, we now need to brew an extra batch in this fermenter. Right. The recipe and everything else will always be the same, but it's how much you have to make of the beer to keep up with the demand. The key is sticking to what you've created and saying, I'm not going to jeopardize making a change to the product. Right. I'm going to look at, okay, maybe I can't brew this other beer I had planned because I need to keep up with this one.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So then, so question for you, Doc. So like, again, first time you obviously introduced this to me, Misguided Angel, and I can't remember when I just like
Oh, did
fell in
I?
love with it.
I
I've
introduced
never.
Oh, that's funny.
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought you told me. That's funny. Yeah.
I mean, maybe I picked it up because I liked the
Yeah,
can.
right,
you
right.
know, it could have happened, but so like, so this being the flagship, you know, and we did the spotlight video over there, and you said that, you know, essentially this keeps the lights on.
Yeah.
When did you know? Like, you must have tried a bunch of beers, and then when, like, I guess I don't know how to structure this question really, but like, when did you know, or when did this start taking off where you're like, this is the beer that's gonna like carry us, you know?
A lot of that starts in the tap room. So our first year we were open, this wasn't even a recipe that was designed yet. We had a lot of other recipes, and it's the feedback you get in your tap room, right? So the customers drinking beer in your tap room, giving you that feedback when you're trying out new recipes, it's the best place to try out a new recipe. You don't have to do artwork or do a can. You create a new recipe, you do a small batch of it, you try it on tap, you get the feedback from not only your customers but also your staff. Our staff are all Cicerone trained and in our tap room, and obviously our production staff is very well trained as well. So it's a matter of getting that feedback, and you're making tweaks. You know, very rarely do you nail a recipe on that first time. I mean, you do, but most of the time you have to go back and make, even if it's small tweaks, you got to make some tweaks to it. For Misguided Angel, we were in the second year of being open, and we made a batch to try out. It was I was working on and trying a New England style, IPA. This was, I guess, 5.5 years ago now, and we put it on tap, and it blew up.
Right. So it just real basic, like
yeah, it was instant.
Yeah.
It was
the smaller demographic, and
and from there we started distributing kegs out to restaurants, and then we couldn't keep up. Next thing you know, we're getting a second bank loan to buy bigger equipment to be able to produce more of this beer because the demand is there. And that's why I say it keeps the lights on, because that's the beer that keeps everything going and allows us to brew things that, other than IPAs, that I want to drink, like a Pilsner in the summertime or something like that, that isn't going to keep the lights on, but at the same time, there's a market for that, and you don't want to always just make one beer all the time. You want to have some variety out there.
right,
So.
right. Yeah. So that begs the question then, again, in my beer knowledge of just drinking them. So you got your, brewers and/or companies that have been around for a long time. Your Sam Adams and whatnot. And then, do we find? I mean, again, this is me from seeing that your most popular brands, your Sam Adams, Coors Lights, your Bud Lights and whatnot. But do we find most companies, they only have that one flagship beer that really takes off? Do they have multiple? I mean, we have a few I can think of, but once their name gets real popular, then they throw one out and they have the mass distribution. But does it, I guess history-wise, does it really come back to, like, most of these companies always started with one beer, and that's what got them popular and their name on the map, I guess.
100%.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is Heady Topper, right? Everybody that knows a little bit about craft beer, I feel like, knows about Heady Topper and how it's from Vermont, and how that probably that 2005-06 area when it started to become a thing, and everybody's like, what is this beer and what is it all about? Hype. It's about hype. You can only get it if you go here and get it. It's great. It's turned people that hate beer, detest beer, that are screwdriver drinkers. Well, here, try this. I think that's one of John Kimmick's things when he had the little place in Stowe, was he had a guy that would come into their bar all the time and would be like, screwdriver.
So this is a true story.
I don't drink beer. So this is the owner of Alchemist Brewery. And I don't drink beer. Just try this. Guy never drank a screwdriver again. Drank Heady Topper. Yeah. So I think it's really what started it was that. Then it became the rage that you have to get anything that Alchemist makes, and it's very similar. I think a lot of their now Northeast specifically, there are some of those breweries that people are just like, if they make it, it must be great, But yeah, everybody's got the one that kind of gets them started, and they still continue to put out great products.
Right.
Like Doc and his team puts out a phenomenal amount of IPAs a year and some new ones, and I'm like, these are great, but I mean, if I'm walking into a store and I need something real quick, I still can't help but grab myself an Angel. Yeah.
Well, you want that familiarity, right?
That's
so
it,
you want that go-to that it's going to be the same beer every time. It's exactly what you want when you want it. But at the same time, there's so much great craft beer out there. You want variety too. So you want to be able to try these other things, but at the same, on a Friday night, you might be like, Tonight I want that beer. That's my beer.
Yeah, right.
So that's
It's true,
important.
though. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had another question on it. Keep talking. I'll think about it. I had another question on.
So we didn't talk about yeast yet, but
Oh yeah, back to the
Yeah,
how to
I kind
actually
of-
build a beer.
Yeah. So this is really the last piece of it. And we probably should get to a point. So you said you were the only one drinking. You're actually the only one drinking now because we finished ours.
Did you finish your whole can?
Yeah.
Oh Jesus,
And so,
I got to catch up.
yeah. And so
yeast.
we'll talk about yeast and kind of how that's the last thing.
Everybody
that,
listening, by the way, it's only like 10:30.
10:44 and 18 seconds. And so, it's yeast is incredibly big shaper of the beer too. I feel like we just say that about everything because they all take a huge role. But again, you can take 2 batches of beer. Say you make 200 gallons of beer, and you put 100 gallons in one fermenter and 100 gallons in another, and you just give them 2 different types of yeast. World's different beer. So yeah, each type of style has its own yeast, and each yeast style probably has hundreds inside of that. And there's many different things you can do with yeast. I remember when I was home brewing, you could buy the little vials of yeast or the packets of yeast that you'd put into your wort once it's finished. Once I got into the nerdy side of home brewing, I would take the heady topper and I'd want their yeast that you couldn't find anywhere. So I'd have 2 or 3 cans empty of heady topper yeast, and I'd harvest that yeast out of there and actually grow it up to be larger yeast that I could then use in my home brew to try to get their profile of beer. But I'll let the professional kind of tell us. Oh, sorry.
No. Again, I feel like we could talk about this forever. Can you trademark your recipe? I mean, is that a thing?
I don't know.
No, I mean, well,
So like, I'm just, you're talking about like, you're talking.
It's a good question.
Trying to get the, trying
So
to recreate
recipes-
heady top or recreate, like, can we recreate this, at home?
Very rarely do breweries publish their recipes so public can see or other breweries can see. Do one of you guys, sorry to ask you, do I just rinsing these out? Thank you.
We got a whole new flavor that's going to go.
That's true. So, I'm sorry, where were we?
so we were talking about recipes.
No,
and
recipe
copyrights.
and copyrights. Yeah. So,
Thanks, buddy.
yeah, most places don't really like publish their recipes, right? You can kind of understand what they have. Some
Jared, I'll
breweries,
tip you later.
some breweries do, but most don't. And so I don't know. From a professional standpoint, the way I look at it is like the home brewer in my education is, I don't think it can be done, and I don't. In most cases, you probably don't know what it is,
Right.
But tell me what you from the.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I was going to say,
have
I mean,
so many questions.
you'd be surprised how many breweries are open books. If someone asks me what the ingredients are in a beer, I'll give you all the information. I mean, I'll tell you what hops are in it, what the alpha acids on those hops are,
Sure.
what the ingredients are, what yeast we use, all that information. But
Wow.
there's so many other things down the road that
Time, temperature.
temperature,
Right.
like all these steps down the road that to make the same exact beer, you would need to know all of that. You would also need to know the process, and your equipment plays a role in that as well.
Right. Yeah.
So I could give you our entire recipe and say, here's my recipe, here it is.
But you may never ever.
You'll never be
Yeah.
able to make the same exact beer because there's going to be 1 or 2 things that are going to be slightly different. It will be similar, but
you
it won't
guys
be
so
exact. So you'll be surprised how many breweries will say, here's our malts, here's our hops, here's the yeast we use. And that's where you get into, we could both make the same beer on different equipment. Process isn't going to be identical, so the final product's not going to be identical.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Real quickly,
go
as
ahead.
we're
Go
pouring
ahead.
this,
So many
as we're
questions.
pouring this here, what do we have here? So this is actually today's Thursday, February 3rd. We've got here Almost Anything Goes sour ale from Lithermans. I think, from what I understand, Almost Anything Goes is going to be the new rotating series that's coming out of different flavors throughout the year.
That's exactly it. So
Awesome.
we do different sour beers throughout the year, but we decided we needed a new sour line that was going to be where we're going to push the limits. It's not going to be, if you're familiar with our cherry sour or our sangria sour, anything like that. It was what are we going to do that's different, and what are we going to do that we can say we're going to really experiment with this. And this is what Almost Anything Goes is going to be. So you're going to see this beer about 4 times a year. This first batch is a fruit punch inspired sour.
I'm excited for this.
It's loaded with cherries, pineapple, passion fruit, guava, and pomegranate. And our whole idea is, how can we pack in the flavors of that childhood drink, Hawaiian punch or any of those fruit punches, but put it into a beer.
So
go ahead.
Sorry, first off, this
No, I got
smells
so
just
many
like fruit punch.
questions. Like my brain just goes nuts. Right now. Go.
No, I just can't believe. So I'm again good friends with Doc, so I'm typically in the know of what's going on, and typically get to try things
do the
before
research?
most people.
You get to do the research?
I haven't had this yet, so I'm very excited for it, and I just can't believe how much it smells like childhood tropical punch that we grew up with.
And that's exactly what we're going for. It takes a lot of fruit to get to that point.
Sure.
There was almost 600 pounds of fruit puree going into this beer, so it was pretty crazy. But the idea with this is a fruited kettle sour. So first you start with a base beer, which is a combination of Pilsner malt and wheat malt. We kettle sour it using lactobacillus, which gives it and kettle sour is a horrible description for someone who doesn't know the process. Essentially, You're just making a tart beer, a beer that's got tartness to it. It's not sour, it's tart. And then we're adding a bunch of fruit, which ferments out. So you actually don't, the sugars turn to alcohol, so you don't really get a sweetness, but there's a perception of sweetness from the flavors of the fruit that still remain in the beer. It's a style of beer that can be very refreshing.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of people that aren't beer drinkers drink a fruited sour and they turn into a beer drinker.
All right, that was my question. That was where I was going with. Like, so when you produce a beer, like when you give something a try, like a sour ale or whatnot, like instantly my wife comes to mind. She's not a beer drinker, at all.
Yeah.
And so when you create this, you're like, all right, what demographic am I really trying to go after? Am I trying to go after a little bit of that? My wife Jen, that like, hey, I know you're a vodka tonic and wine drinker. Here, give this a try. Maybe you'll like this. I mean, is there some thought that goes into that, or?
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, there is. The idea is, you're going after that broader market. There's people that only drink sours. They don't drink any other style of beer. They'll drink fruited sours, and that's about it. Then you get the people that just like to change it up. They'll drink IPAs, they'll drink stouts, but they also, in certain times a year or certain occasions, they want a fruited sour. So you have both demographics. My favorite thing is when someone comes into the tap room or we're at a festival, there's always someone that says, I don't drink beer. I'm just here with my friends who are beer drinkers. And then I'll say, well, what do you normally drink? Oh, I drink white wine. All right, try this.
Yeah.
This is a fruit punch sour. This is a whatever sour. Give that a taste. And they're
That's
like,
really
no.
good.
Yeah.
It's
and
delicious.
when you see them take that sip and look at you and go, this isn't beer, and you're like, no, it absolutely is beer.
Right.
You've just never had a beer you've liked yet. Like
Right.
that's the thing. It's not that you don't like beer. You just haven't had one you
I
don't
swear
like.
to God, she'd like this.
Oh, she would.
She might pour a little vodka in it.
I bet you would. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But I bartended for quite some time at the tap room for Lithermans, and that was one of my favorite things to do. Was when people came in and they're like, "Yeah, I don't drink beer, or I don't drink craft beer. I only drink, Bud Lights. Oh, well, try this wonderful Pilsner that we make here." And now people are like, I actually like this more than Bud Light, or whatever the case might be. But the same thing with people that come in, then I drink wine, or I drink, sangrias only, or whatever the case might be. We'll certainly try this. And in fact, we have a sangria-inspired sour beer. Let's try this. So it definitely turns a lot of people. And yeah, that's the other thing, is it opens up the ability to make cocktails. So I've done this at home. I think one of the favorite ones in the Murphy house anyway is kind of I'd say one of the big sours that hit the ground for them right off the bat was Little Peach of My Heart. If you can't understand that song reference, I'm sorry. So Little Peach of My Heart, peach-inspired sour ale. That with a little, it was Mother's Day. Was making her breakfast, poured 4 ounces of it in a champagne flute with like a half an ounce of vodka on it, and then topped it off with orange juice. It was this little mimosa for her that we brought it to Doc's house afterwards, and so now these are not only phenomenal to drink as is, but you can make some
going well with that.
This would get exact same thing. Yeah,
yeah.
It would be, it's a lot of fun. So definitely it can change a lot of people, and I think that's one thing people discount is people think of beer as either IPA, stouts, lagers. It's like there's this whole other, really multiple other varieties out there you can find that, and some even taste like wine. We could get into Belgians and all that, which we certainly won't today.
Yeah.
But there are so many different profiles out
start
there
losing people, I think.
to find everybody. Right. This is amazing, Doc. Great job.
This is
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thanks.
So just another couple questions I had. So like, I mean, obviously, so how long you been open now?
6 years.
6 years?
Yeah.
And then this is taken off, obviously fantastic for you. But I mean, is your ultimate goal, like, hey, I want this nationwide. I want this one beer to hit all 50 states, it known, or, tell us a little bit about like kind of where, like, I guess starting off, and then where do you see yourself going, I guess?
So, the concept of having a nationwide beer now, like I look at like Sam Adams, right? Sam Adams is a household name now for beer drinkers. And you see it in all 50 states. I don't think that the craft beer market is going to have beers like that in the future. I think breweries have become more regional, right?
Yep.
You might you might find it beer that's made in New Hampshire, in Florida, or in Texas, but it's not going to be anywhere in the surrounding area. I think you're going to see most breweries are going to be in their home state, some surrounding states, maybe a couple other key places throughout the country, but not everywhere. I don't think that a mass marketed craft beer, I don't think that there's enough room in the industry for that anymore. For us, I look at, I want to be able to be in Philadelphia is great. New York City is going to be a lot of fun, being that I'm originally from there. And being a household name in New Hampshire is a really big goal. Long term, I look at our brewery and our tap room being a bigger facility, serving more food or having lots more food trucks than we currently do, having a bigger outdoor area. So I look at focusing on our local customers and New Hampshire as our mainstay.
Sure.
Eventually,
single location or multiple locations?
That's still up for debate.
Yeah.
I think a final future home for a single location, and then possibly a satellite location, as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll just talk it. We'll go. Yeah. I'll stop.
That's another time.
My brain
right?
just,
But
we're going to have you on again because I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Like, this is fantastic. So go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was going to say, for us, I think New England, like Massachusetts, is obviously a market that we definitely want to be in, and that may be in planning right now. So we're looking at that. You want to be the local beer that people know they can get it. They can always get it, and it's always going to be fresh because it's not going to have to, be drove halfway across the country and go through warehouse changes and everything else. So there's all these components to it, but. Building our local market, our local brand, and our community are the most important things. And we try and do that with a lot of things. Getting involved with animal shelters, which is a big thing for my wife and I, were really important to us, as well as other local charities as well. And being part of the local community is very important.
Right.
So. That's fantastic. Excuse me.
Quickly, we're getting close to the end here, so where can they find your tap house? I don't think we caught that earlier in the episode, so tell us a little bit about your location, what goes on there, and so on.
Yeah, so we are located on Hall Street in Concord, New Hampshire. Lithermans.beer is the website where you can find all the information on that.
And that has where you're on tap and everything, like the locations you can find it?
Locations on tap is a little tough.
Yeah.
In the craft beer market, things change daily, so that can be a little tough to give you a definite on all those locations. But you can always stay up to date on what's on tap at the brewery itself, what's available there. Also, what events we have going on, whether it's we might have a local animal shelter doing an adoption drive, or some other community events going on. During the warmer months, our outdoor seating area with what food trucks are there. Also, what's upcoming for new releases that's coming down the pipe as well.
Yep.
We always have 12 beers on tap at the brewery. They're always changing, and some things are only available at the brewery. You'll never see them anywhere else.
Right.
So that's pretty much what we do at the brewery. It's pretty, we're in like most breweries, you're in a production facility, so you're in a commercial area, but we've got
commercial park.
But we've got a big outdoor seating area in the summertime, and we've got a big tap room that fits 100 people inside year round as well.
It's a fantastic location.
Definitely a place to check out. Excuse me, it's super easy to get to. It's right at the 8993 junction in Concord. So literally, if you're coming back from the ski slopes in Vermont or coming back from up north in the Lincoln area, it's probably 3 to 4 minutes off the highway from either side. Again, most of the time they've got food trucks there. You can go on their Facebook page and kind of find that out. But they also don't mind, you grab a pizza and come in with some friends, that's okay.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people overlook that piece. But you can totally do that, which is great. and but they do have some good foods there. The chips and salsa lately has absolutely been killing it. That Chipotle salsa is so good. But yeah, this it's a great facility to go to. Always has phenomenal music going. 'Cause again, as Doc said, it's a huge part of the atmosphere, really, within the brewery. I'm really excited about this Almost Anything Goes sour ale, actually, with the Boss Tones. The Boss Tones kind of look to it. I have it.
This is 4 times a year, you said?
This series will be 4 times a year. Yeah.
And then when did this come out?
It technically gets released tomorrow. So
right.
yeah,
It's not even out yet. Yeah.
So, never mind.
So,
never mind.
it goes on sale tomorrow. You're getting it a little early.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it hits distribution the end of next week. So
More questions. We'll go for another half hour.
Sure.
It's all right.
So yeah, I've already got I've got a disc golf team competition thing at Topo, the top of the hill in Canterbury, New Hampshire this weekend, and we've got a team coming down from Maine, and they're already hitting me up with, hey, I need Litherman's sour release this weekend. Can you grab me a case ahead of time, please? So
Nice.
So yeah, I'll be coming by tomorrow to grab that with the keg to share with the other team.
Perfect.
But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. This
Yeah,
is great.
absolutely. Everybody, I'm telling you, if you haven't had an opportunity to try Litherman's yet here in New Hampshire, it's
My favorite
great
beer,
stuff.
Misguided Angel, by far the best.
They cover the gamut too. You can get everything from
Although this sour ale is really good.
it's good. You can get everything from a double IPA to a West Coast IPA to a sour ale to barrel aged, bourbon barrel aged stouts to coffee porters. I mean, they got it all, guys. The 12 taps really keep a style, lots of styles of beers out there. And with Doc now having Dropkick as the head brewer and seeing her series of her English beers coming out, that's been phenomenal. So great place to go. Matt, you got anything else here to close us up today?
No, you don't want me talking anymore. I'll just keep going. I have so many questions.
Guys, thank you. We had a ton of fun. Could have kept going for a long time, but hopefully we kept all you in here. We're excited to hear reviews, and we're excited to hear what you wanted us to talk about here going forward. Again, Doc, thanks so much for coming today, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. This is fantastic.
Yeah, and guys, thank you so much for your time producing this for us and cleaning our beer glasses out. We'll be better at that
our
next
producers.
time. All right, everybody, thanks a lot. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Take care.